All right, everybody. Welcome to the second discussion of the asynchronous simultaneity lecture. I might say a few things about my plan for the discussion, but I'll do that later, just in case some other people show up later. I don't want to have to repeat. And so, since it's a small group right now, we don't even have to start a queue or anything. We'll just kind of start with a free for all, and there's uh, there's no need for anyone to have watched the other discussion, which was with a couple of the programmers here at TU, with Sam and Spencer and Anne. They were part of the live audience. And I guess with that, yeah, I'm really excited to hear just your initial impressions about synchronic instantaneity versus asynchronous simultaneity. I'm wondering if you guys find that jargon to be cumbersome, annoying, confusing, or useful. And then, yeah, outside of the jargon, as far as the concepts go, is it making sense? Is it useful? And what was there anything in particular that really stood out to you from that lecture that you're looking forward to going deeper into?
I can start. Yeah, first of all, the jargon, I would say, is a bit confusing, but not in a bad way, I would say, right? It's confusing because it's like the words kind of so like resemble one another so much. But uh, I actually like the I read it and I also watched it. So I like the this like small summary of the CMT, right? And then I was thinking like maybe it would be very like easy if Benjamin was here, but like in terms of like how like our media habits is shaped by the politics of the given place, right? And that was interesting because like that thought, because then you have like this now this, now this, now this within like a more like in a democratic country, you have like this now, this in the media, then you have like these news always like putting up different like things in your face, right? And then if you compare it to like here, my experience, it's like you have two narratives that the news play and different channels play, and then you don't have this like kind of now this feeling in the news. It's more like if you change the channels, you have the now this. But then if you don't change the channel, you don't have the now this, right? And I'm just thinking like, what does that really, how does this really like affect the subjectivity of the person that's like watching the news and so on? But yeah, that might take us to another road. So like in terms of like asynchronous simultaneity, I pretty much like the idea of like this on-demand lecture or like on-demand video that we can binge and then discuss later. And you mentioned they like this what the website could be, right? That's like a very, very good uh goal, I would say, right? So yeah, I don't know if anyone had something to that, but
I would say I like it. I like the format too of kind of like we could binge like the material on our own and then come back and like really the gatherings will be more for like open discussion. I think I like that. As far as the terms, I mean I agree with Karam. I kind of like the synchronic instantaneity and the asynchronic simultaneity. Am I saying it right? I think I'm saying it right. I mean it is a little cumbersome. I will say that at first. But I mean I think it is a useful way to put it, but cumbersome it definitely is. Um, But I did also like how you kind of weaved a lot of the things together. Like the PCFM came up, the now this obviously, the vicious cycle, solicitude and solitude. You got the three A's in there, so it was kind of like you kind of touched on a lot of things there that we've been kind of heading down that path for a while now. So it was cool to see kind of all that kind of come together. Um, but yeah, for me, I mean, I was just hooked on the now this part. I felt like I got a good understanding of why you're relating it to the PCFM.
Oh yeah.
And I guess, yeah, I guess that's pretty much kind of as a first thing to say. I think that's kind of all I got. I was kind of looking through here. I like how you put the medium, the message of the medium in the churn of the vicious cycle. I found that to be kind of helpful to kind of link those two things together. But yeah, that's kind of what I got for now.
Dude, I'm like figuring out like you can always bring it back. Everything we talk about, you can always just bring it right back into the vicious cycle. Like I'm realizing, like, damn, like just thinking about the churn, the rainbow vacuum cleaner at the end of history. Like you take ambiguity, non-committal curiosity, and idle chatter, and then you just take any other bad thing that you're ever thinking about, and then wonder how does it factor in, and see like, well, is there a structural relation? Let's use the now this, now this, now this. Of course there's a structural relation. Well, it relates directly to the non-committal curiosity, right? Like if you're on TikTok and you're now this, now this, now this, every time you swipe you're saying now this yourself. And or if you're in a conversation with somebody and there's not like a through line because you don't have like a shared basis of like values and like a goal kind of structuring the relationship, and then it's just kind of like, yeah, I was walking outside yesterday and this person looked at me weird, I don't know. And then yeah, so then I saw this, there's a great deal on these shoes. Anyway, my mom called, and then yeah, oh, my boss is, it just you start to notice, it's like, wait a minute, the idle chatter is now this, now this, now this. Like it's constantly doing that thing. And then even if something important comes up, I don't know. And actually, I want to pick on Anne, but I don't think she's here. But she says she'll listen to it later, so I'll do it anyway. But a bad habit she's gotten really good at breaking. But like back in the day, she used to always, if we were talking, she'd go, "Oh, random thought," and then she would bring something up, and I was always like, "It's here, wait, hold on." She's popping in right now, so I'll actually restate this. Okay, she's here now, and I was just saying I'm gonna pick on you. Welcome here. And then I was like, oh, she'll listen to this later, but then you popped in, so I'll just say it. But we're talking about
get roasted.
Yeah, we're talking about the now this, now this, now this, and tying that into idle chatter and non-committal curiosity. And I was saying, yeah, Anne was in it for a while. There was like this bad habit of just like always being like, oh, random. Like every time you had something to say, and I was like, Anne, it's not random, it's like what you want to say. And then you're like, yeah, but it feels random because it's not what we're talking about. Anyway, that was the fight. Looks like you cut out for a minute there with your internet.
Me, or am I cutting out, or are you cutting out? Someone's cutting out.
Looks like it was you.
Okay.
Anyway.
Yeah. True.
But yeah, Kadem went, then Ruiz went, and he was just bringing it back to they both were talking about the now this stuff, and Ruiz tied it into the vicious cycle. And so I was just talking about how it's kind of awesome to start taking any thinker who's focusing on something and then bring it back into the vicious cycle. Like, how does it feed back into that dynamic that we always find ourselves in. So anyway. Yeah, Ian, Ao, Federico. There's no order here.
Whoa. Well, if no one is going to say anything, I can say something. Okay. With idle chatter, the vicious cycle and idle chatter is like what I also realized with idle chatter in my own life is that there is like something pragmatic to it where people kind of discuss ideas and they use a very like pragmatic way of like explaining the ideas, and that creates this idle chatter because you go over the same thing over and over and over again. So like whenever you sit with people and you talk about an issue, you come across same points because no one is willing to leave aside this pragmatic way of language and then focusing on like more like, okay, what do we mean by this? How does this happen? And more on this like maybe like theoretical understanding of things, right? And that's interesting because then that also ties back to non-committal curiosity, right? People talk about ideas and pragmatically that creates like this non-committal curiosity as well. Uh, and I don't know, like this is something that I realized very recently. And then you have the problem of like how to break that without being so like jargony and so like uh, obnoxious about language. That's also like also what we talk about before, right? And but pragmatism is an issue there, I would say, in a way. Maybe. I don't know.
Are you saying that the conversations people have, they're getting stuck in like how they're talking instead of like why they're talking? Or like
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Like more anecdotal examples is like uh right, so like for example, in my own anecdotal examples is that people will posit like very nationalist ideas for pragmatic reasons, and then you cannot go over, like you cannot go beyond some of the narratives, right? And then it results as also with like this non-committal curiosity where people have curious ideas, but they don't willing to go beyond their own language usage, right? So like they stuck in loops. Uh, I don't know if I'm able to explain myself very well, but yeah.
I think that makes sense that people get stuck in their loops though, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I can mention. Yeah, so I watched the lecture, and yeah, I really like the term. In general, I found that for me, for example, live lectures have always been very useful because when I'm listening in the background, when I'm working, I just don't soak things in as much. And when I'm live, also I guess there's more of a drive when the thing is live. So if there's a way to have the same drive, to have the same uh, uh, to to lead to sort of the same level of understanding, etc. But I can also, because of course the bummer is that sometimes I cannot attend all the lectures, of course. So if there's a way to do that, that would be really cool, and to do it sort of at your own pace, but also, yeah, on a wavelength with everyone else. Yeah.
I'm curious if anybody else feels that way.
Yeah.
I feel
Same.
the exact opposite way. I hate live lectures. Yeah, they are disgusting because I don't know what to do with my body, and I'm like, I may need to take a like maybe I want to listen for 10 minutes and I need to take a break. At some point, I also just like check out, or I just have a hard time just like sitting down for a extended period of time. So I much rather have someone do like a lecture, like long format, so I have time to either like just watch the whole thing or watch it in small chunks. And also, like, sometimes when you don't understand something in a lecture, that may be like the turning point where you check out. But if you have it like recorded, you can go back, try to like understand, maybe like stay with the thing for a few more minutes. Like, I just think like in this case, the medium allows for a much yeah, I mean, like you don't have the burden of the present, right? Like you can just take your time, go back, and then maybe have. I think like a live discussion is better, more engaging. But yeah, if I had to choose, I would rather. It's like I feel like listening to a lecture is more like reading a book than when it's like recorded instead of live. So I prefer the asynchronous style, and also like I don't know, like also time of the day, what happened before the lecture, in what mood are you, in what disposition. It's just like it's gonna change all the time, right? So for me, I think in this case, technology reigns supreme.
Really quick, welcome Rebecca. And so now that you're here, I'm just gonna say what we've got so far is about half the people have said something about the lecture, and it's good. We've got a sort of we've got two archetypically opposite positions. Federico being the representative of those kinds of persons who require or I'll say thrive off of the additional pressure brought to the event by being there live. Like it forces that performance of taking it more seriously. Would you say that, Federico? Like there's some kind of like you're kind of kept on your toes almost like you it helps you focus, whereas like you're saying you'd get distracted otherwise, and then Ian's saying the opposite where it's like yeah no it's preferable to be able to go over it at your own pace and pause and speak. Like personally, like I'm thinking about it, and it's like I think I'm probably more on the Ian side here. I can think of times where maybe it's like maybe I'm a bit more like Federico, but I think a lot of the time I like to be able to go over something and then go over parts again. You know, if especially if I struggled with them. But is that fair? Did I say that right, Federico and Ian? Is that pretty much the two positions here?
So, but for example, I also get distracted less when the lecture is live. So if I'm doing something else, I'll get distracted. If it's live, I'll just focus on the lecture. But yeah, I mean, also there's not necessarily a sort of pressure, but it's just an additional incentive to prepare for. I don't know. Yeah.
I'd say that I tend to be kind of like a little mix of both. Like I love reviewing lectures on my own time and thinking them through, and then maybe writing some notes or doing or while I'm doing something else, and that can be very helpful. But at the same time, I do tend to thrive off of a certain kind of pressure like for either for deadlines or I mean like this goes back to like college, right? But like so deadlines can be helpful. The fact that there is a time and a place for something is almost for me a kind of touching grass with other people, with the social in some way. And some of that helps keep me motivated and on track. When left to my own devices, I have a tendency both to like procrastinate profusely and like things when they remain only at the level of like the possible, like the virtual possible, it becomes an ever shifting like fluid flow of virtual possibles that can at any given time take priority. But when there is like a no, this time, this place, this either has to be done or have to show up, like that tends to ground me a bit and it changes my priority structure a little bit. So then a great example of this is the Agora paper, which like it was like, oh, uh it's basically done, but we'll wait till this day if you're gonna submit something. I'm like, okay, shit, okay. Literally a couple days before I go and do it, like, you know, so like these sorts of
Quick,
things.
quick point of clarification. Let me just check here. So, like this meeting, for instance, having an actual time, right? Did that work as a deadline to to kick you into gear to get through the actual lecture? Is that
Yeah, I listened to it. I listened to it once, and then I listened to it a second time today while I was helping my mom build a dresser. So
okay?
like that helped me.
Nice. So then I want to go back to Kerem and Ruiz here in a second, and actually have you guys address this as well, because I don't think you guys said yet what you feel about it. But also, I think Ao and Anne haven't said any opening stuff about this lecture yet. And if you're gonna be near some internet where you can, because I know she's like doing a little farm work right now, but yeah, we definitely want to hear from you as well. But oh, there she is.
Ooh, cool hat.
Yeah, it's Farmer Ann, everybody.
Thank you. Yes, Farmer Ann. So pale. I'm already getting tan. It's great. Yeah, I'm trying to like I just re-listened to the lecture this morning, and I think in terms of opening remarks, I really like that you kind of reminded us of McLuhan and Postman, because I think that's really important to just keep in mind while we're thinking about our own relationships to our media consumption. And in this exact moment, I'm like, oh, I'm in good Wi-Fi spot right now, but like I'd need another minute. But it's like I almost feel torn between like Federico and Ian's position. Like I like to show up to things live. Then at a certain point, I think the way that the medium has shaped us, like the medium is the message. I just interact differently with digital mediums and even digital live events differently than I would like an actual lecture. And so like if we are really trying to harness the media and come into a freer relation, then at least taking the pressure off of being there live all the time feels like freeing in a sense. But yeah, come back to me in a little bit and I'll have more thoughts about I think the like first part of the lecture where you were talking about McLuhan and Postman and then now this, but I just need a moment to like remember. I've just been cat wrangling, so caught me
Cool.
there.
Yeah, nice. All right, how about you, Ao?
I think I lean more to the asynchronous side of things because it's just my processing speed is I feel is slower. So I have to like go back and, go over things again. Or sometimes live it's a bit overwhelming, but also like everyone else has said, live like puts pressure to like actually, show up and do things because like there's also like if it's all asynchronous, you could just keep like, putting it off, you know. So I think that live pressure is also good. I don't know. The lecture and reading the chapter got me thinking about like our experience of time and like how there's a more like habitual kind of time that's like mostly like not conscious. Like a lot of the time, like pretty much most of our lives, we're just going through the motions, and it's like the stuff we did, it's like it didn't happen almost because sometimes you're like, oh, did I lock the door? Did I did I turn the stove off? You know, that kind of thing. And it's like, I feel like the medium, it's like it tries to hack, or I don't know, the hack that kind of habitual time somehow. And like these tech CEOs, whatever, like I think in the early days, they talk about trying to make their platforms like, I don't know how to describe it, like just like part of the background, like just part of the infrastructure. So it's like it's about it's like forming habits, but at the same time it's like they're also trying to like grab your attention. So I don't know. I'm just kind of rambling. I don't know if you get what I mean, but yeah.
Let me see if I can clarify. So this could this kind of get at what I was getting at in the Agora seminar when I was talking about the difference between the now and the moment, and how like a moment is memorable in like this sort of sense where it's like significant. You'll keep going back to it, or it informs kind of what's going on, but like it's not the same thing as like just a now. And if all of our time is just broken up into like these sort of trivialized nows, it kind of eats up all the time, but it's also like where to go. It's not actually significant.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. I don't know. I'm still kind of forming my thoughts.
Oh,
And
other question for you though, Ayo. Was this your first time reading Postman, or had you already read it?
I had already read it, but that was a while ago, so I kind of forgot a lot of it. So it's good to go back. But yeah.
How many of you did the chapter 7 of Amusing Ourselves to Death as preparation? Show of hands. I'm seeing 1, 2,
I read the book
3.
before, but I didn't do the reading for today.
Cool. Well, we might actually do a little bit of it. But yeah, let's check in on Kedem and Ruiz, because this is just kind of I mean, I guess it's almost like a teach. It sounds like it's becoming a sort of teaching style. You know, what's your learning style? Do you find it more beneficial this way or that way? And I don't want us to be thinking about this that way, because it's a bad habit. And I've realized that a lot of the times when I'm trying to talk about a structural dynamic, what we tend to do is like personalize it and say whether it does or does not apply to us as individuals. But what I'm trying to get at here is, what do you think the effect is of too much of a priority of the synchronic instantaneity at the level of the organization? What kind of an effect does prioritizing too much of that do to the group over time? But that's a bigger thing I want to get into. First, let's just focus on, since it's a nice small group, I actually really want to actually just say, okay, Kenem, Ruiz, how you feel? Are you more on the Ian side or the Federico side here? Start, yeah, we'll go David.
I would say I'm more on the Ian side.
Okay.
But I think it's only because, I mean, I think of there's still pressure there. There's definitely still pressure there. But I feel like when it's just to attend a lecture, I don't know what the lecture is going to be about necessarily. So it's not like this, for example, the way that this was structured, I heard the lecture. So then I could almost link it to like the solitude solicitude thing, where I'm kind of thinking about something because there's gonna be something where I'm gonna participate in, if that makes sense, as opposed to, I'm just gonna set my schedule up to attend this thing, and maybe I'll have a question or maybe I won't. Whereas for something like this, like throughout the week, it was like, all right, I want to schedule like an hour here to watch the lecture. I want to schedule maybe like another little hour over here to maybe read the chapter. And then it kind of helps me kind of like plot the week in a way to then when we come together, it's kind of like, all right, so we're gonna have hopefully what turns out to be like a cool conversation instead of, I mean, not that the lectures weren't cool to listen to, but it's kind of like, especially for me that I'm new to this stuff, it's kind of just like a barrage of like new terms and mayhem in a way, as opposed to this where I can kind of watch it, slow it down, pause it, go back, and then kind of like plan to like really kind of participate with the material and then bring it in and have like kind of like the discussion. So
Yeah, I have similar ideas with Ruiz. It's like depending on how the live meeting is going to be. Like I prefer like discussion or like some type of like activity like we did with Andy's lectures, or like we did writing hours and stuff like that, to be much more like beneficial in terms of like I feel like I get more out of it instead of the lecture, because I can watch the lecture from the recording and I will still get maybe the similar thing as I'm like watching it live. Uh, but like if we are going to have a discussion, if I'm going to be more active and if other people are going to be more active, I feel like it's just like more beneficial for everyone in a way. But I don't know. It's how I feel about it, at least. Yeah.
All right, cool. And so, part of the reason I care so much about it, because I'm over here saying, well, I don't want to get stuck at the individual level, but the reason I do care about the individual levels, obviously, I do want it to work for different learning styles, and I'm hoping that the that this dynamic between on-demand lectures and a planned discussion, it'll still make it so that, yeah, we still get to have the synchronic instantaneity, we still get to have that sense, but also, Will, when he wrote his piece on the Agora, he said he was going to be here for this, but I think he decided to actually switch it, so now he'll be here for the one that we do next week for the European people, because it's going to be earlier in the day. But he watched the Agora seminar 5 times while working on that piece, which is 20 hours. And he did 20 hours on that. And when a person does 20 hours on something, you got to think about how much more they have to offer than if they're just responding in the moment. And so, yeah, but then again, that's not always true. And Federico, one thing I'm thinking is like, I'm thinking anybody who feels like you do, you ought to let me know if it actually benefits you extra. Then I wouldn't be surprised if it benefits me extra to actually have you there as part of the live audience, just because I do like to have at least a couple people there, right? It is helpful. But what I don't like is an audience of people kind of feeling like they have to be there, and then feeling like they have to go, oh shit, what am I thinking? What am I thinking? What do I want to say? When it's like, a lot of people like Ian, for instance, probably come to the channel already, before he ever became a subscriber, he was listening to the stuff on demand, pausing, speeding forward, repeating, doing stuff on his own time. And so there might be a bit of a selection bias there as well. But okay, now I want to pivot into this bigger question. But first, we'll go to Anne.
Yeah, I just want to say, I think hopefully my service is okay right now. Something that's great about Theory Underground is that we critique the schooling like mainstream schooling and mainstream compulsory schooling is really good for fast brains, and people who have fast brains can excel. And not all of us have fast brains. I've always been the type of person to, like, for the most part, want to sit and listen, and maybe I have a question or maybe I have something to say, but more often than not I don't. Like, I need some time to sit on it and think about it, and yeah, listen again, write down. And so when you do a live lecture and then there's a discussion or a Q&A right after, well, that's great for the fast brain people. But then the slower brain people, and like fast brain, slow brain, these aren't good categories or words, but like some of us can just process that information really quickly, some of us can't. Some of us need more time, and I don't think either is good or bad. It's just how some people's brains process information. And so yeah, have like not feeling the pressure to, oh, the lecture's done, I better sit and try to think of a question if I want to participate and if I want to show that I was actually paying attention. And then I'm sure like the people who can think quicker and have those questions immediately, like maybe people are feeling self-conscious. Oh, I'm asking all these questions, I'm talking a lot, I want to leave space for other people, but oh, no one else is talking, I guess I'll keep talking. Like, it almost creates that dynamic where if everyone can read and listen at their own pace and then come together, then oh, I can listen to it once and have the conversation, or I'm going to listen to it 3 times, I'm going to pause it, like whatever. I think that opens up the discussion for the mingling of different learning speeds that the normal schooling system does not. Oh, you're the smart kids get to be in one group and the dumb kids get to be in the other group. But what if the dumb kids aren't dumb, they just take a little bit longer.
I've been doing weapons of mass instruction here with some of the students during Dead Week, and I'm going to be doing a couple more with them this coming Monday. But it's definitely a huge theme with John Taylor Gatto, and he talks about how, maybe I'll actually try to even find the quote here, but basically you take 2 people and one of them takes twice as long to get to this reading level, but at the point that they're both at that reading level, they're there. Now they're both there. And so, you take 2 people at the age of 25 and they're both able to read, the Declaration of Independence and able to do it, thoughtfully from different perspectives and everything like that. Okay. Well, they're equals, right? The schooling system doesn't care about that, though. The schooling system cares about the rate at which they were able to get to that level. And if you are at a different rate, it considers you inferior, like you're actually, but it also, if you're really fast at it, it'll often hold you back, right? It's like slow down, slow down, slow down. So it's like people who are fast or who just want to go at something being told, all right, slow down, stop, slow down, hold on, you're leaving other people behind. Yeah. And so it's just like, well, there should be no stigma about being slower or faster. Like Heidegger is a really slow thinker. He's a really slow thinker. Nietzsche also said that he writes for slow thinkers. He says it in the introduction to the Genealogy of Morals. He says, I'm writing for a person who thinks the way that cows chew food. Like they have multiple stomachs, so they chew the food, then they spit it up and they chew it again, they spit it up and they chew it again, which is why beef is so good for us, by the way. It's because what the cow does to the grass is something that we can't do to the grass. They're able to extract from it enzymes we can't, right? Because otherwise we'd have to have a whole bunch of stomachs and chew the cud like they do. But what does it mean to chew the cud intellectually? Well, it's kind of like what Will is saying when he goes, I'm slow, so I watched it 5 times, All right, but now let's zoom out. Structurally, the dynamic here that we're talking about, I want to hear what you all kind of have what you're all thinking about my student responses that I brought up, right? When I was asking them about their smartphone usages or internet platform usages. And then yeah, what are the kinds of effects of having done things the way we're doing we have done it. Yeah. Or anything like that. You know, if you kind of want to take it in a different direction, you're welcome. But let's let a few people go on this at least first. I want to start with Ruiz and then Ian. I'll say that first because I really want to hear from you both on this one in particular.
Ian, you want to go first? I'll go first if.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. I was hoping you went first. I got. You mean as far as like what you said about like the scheduling of certain things and how the students like the only things that they do on schedules would be like things for work or things for school? Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Right. Yeah. So basically, people confirmed in both classes where I asked everybody, nobody is doing anything synchronic instantaneity wise except unless it's work or schoolwork or in a couple cases sports games, right? Because a sports game, everybody watches it in that sort of synchronic instantaneity phase. But
Right.
outside of that, everybody's just kind of now I don't want to say that accessing TikTok whenever you want is the same thing as synchronic instantaneity, because that's not the same, right? That's little tiny bits of all chopped up and nobody's, you know, so it's not the same, but it's definitely not scheduled, right? And it's definitely not like a scheduled live thing. They're definitely they have a sense of immediacy structuring what they're doing, but it's not the same thing as the scheduled live thing, right?
Yeah.
So it's not I don't really know how to bridge that thought to the way we've been doing things, but to me it feels significant and I'm still trying to figure it out, and that's kind of why I am interested in your guys' thoughts. But it's but that there's that, but then there's also just, you know, what are we selecting for versus what are we excluding, doing things the way we have been doing them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of hard to say for me because it's, I guess, the way things have been kind of scheduled out. I don't know. I guess I never thought about it in the way that this lecture and like the conversation, the way it's been going now. I don't think I really ever thought about it like that. I mean, I will say that there was something about like how I never thought about it, but yeah, there's not a lot of things that are scheduled really anymore, except other than the time that you have to get to work, the time that you leave work. And then for me, it's like basically sporting events that would probably be things that, you know, it's a set time. But yeah, I hadn't really thought about that before, but I guess intuitively there's something about like you definitely feel like if you don't attend, you miss out on something. Even though, I mean, you could always, the lectures were always available afterwards. So I don't think that really like affected me too much either. Because I mean, at the end of the day, it's a live lecture, but you know, it wasn't like mandatory to attend. But in a way, it kind of was mandatory if you wanted to participate. And I think maybe I did, now that I've said that out loud, I maybe did feel a little bit of a tension of like, okay, I have to make sure I show up to this thing at this time. And then I have to really, really, really pay attention if I want to participate, because there's not going to be like a follow-up or anything. I mean, I could always type something into the chat, but I'm not really too I'm not too comfortable with posting. Not that I'm not comfortable with it, but it's just that I can't formulate, I guess, the questions in the way that I always want to, in a sense. But as far as like the meetings go, I guess there is kind of a pressure to like attend the meeting and then have like be like, okay, I better pay attention and maybe I'll have a question this time. So maybe that's just kind of my experience with it for sure. But yeah, I hadn't. It's funny that I hadn't thought about the fact that there's not a lot of things scheduled other than work and sports. So that's kind of blowing my mind a little bit that I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah, no, for me, I mean, I think it's kind of sad that that is seems to be the case for the majority of people. But I think fortunately for me, most of the things that I schedule are actually to hang out with other people. Or like I am very particular, for example, about scheduling me going to jiu-jitsu, right? Because it's like I need buddies. I can just like show up and like do it. So I also think that there is certain activities that are much better if you schedule them and you put the pressure of actually showing up. Like if you're going for a run, right? It's good to schedule it with your running body and like doing it. I don't know why I keep coming to exercise, but even if you're gonna go see a play or something, it's something you gotta schedule in advance, and then it's like a live event that is gonna be like it's ephemeral, right? Like that. I think that is not an experience that you can recreate in the screen.
What?
However,
Sorry.
yep.
Yeah, well, one little clarification point here, but I think it's very important because this actually happened with one of my students in Social 122. He was actually like surprised by everyone else's answers and then started talking about how he schedules hikes, he schedules this, that, he starts listing off all the kinds of things he schedules with other people. And he was talking like he thought he was the only person who was like scheduling, like doing
Everyone
real
does
life
that.
stuff. And I was like, no, dude, no, because like that wasn't the question. The question, because I understand it sounds that way, but I'm saying specifically on your phone, stuff that requires you being on your phone in a scheduled live way. So
I hate that.
yeah.
Yes.
yeah.
I absolutely hate that. And I think especially with Theory Underground, like I think in my personal opinion, there would be better ways of showing commitment than a scheduled meeting or lecture, unless it's like something that is relevant and it's like actually like being planned and maybe there's gonna be like a discussion or something like that. But for example, I much rather have like, or I much rather show my like accountability and commitment by watching a lecture and then maybe do like a reflection piece. Or like if David says, like for example, if Ruiz does like a paper, right? And he's like, is there someone willing to read and make suggestions? Like I feel like that is way more like valuable and shows way more care to the work of each other than if we just like show up, like, because I mean showing up does take effort and time, but also I think it's like kind of like it's even a bit harder because I feel like for most of us, Theory Underground is like something on top of what we're doing, and it kind of like we're trying to push it, but sometimes it's hard, right? Like you can't show up to the meetings, and it's not because we're not committed, but you just can't. Like it doesn't work.
Sweet. Now I wanna take some turns just doing some exegetical reading from chapter 7, but before we do it, anybody have anything on that they want to throw in real quick?
Exegetical readings are great. That is definitely a great like scheduling. Yes, like that. Yeah.
Let's just get into it then. So I don't have a screen share of the text of abilities because I'm on my phone. But if anybody wants to, like for instance, Kerem, it looks like you might be pulling it up in front of you. If you are, let me make you a co-host so you are able to share screen because that would be sick. And then I'll pull up for my own text version, and I'm going to start reading while you pull it up there. The American humorist H. Allen Smith once suggested that of all the worrisome words in the English language, the scariest is uh-oh, And when a physician looks at your x-rays and with knitted brow says, uh-oh. Oh, as when a physician goes, uh-oh, about that. Yeah. I should like to suggest that the words which are the title of this chapter, now this, are as ominous as any, all the more so because they are spoken without knitted brow, indeed, with a kind of idiot's delight. The phrase, if that's what it may be called, adds to our grammar a new part of speech, a conjunction that does not connect anything to anything, but does the opposite, separates everything from everything. As such, it serves as a compact metaphor for the discontinuities in so much that passes for public discourse in present day America. Now, this is commonly used on radio and television newscasts to indicate that what one has just heard or seen has no relevance to what one is about to hear or see, or possibly to anything one is ever likely to hear or see. The phrase is a means of acknowledging the fact that the world, as mapped by the speeded up electronic media, has no order or meaning and is not to be taken seriously. There is no murder so brutal, no earthquake so devastating, no political blunder so costly, for that matter, no ball score so tantalizing, or a weather report so threatening, that it cannot be erased from our minds by a newscaster saying, now this. The newscaster means that you have thought long enough on the previous matter, approximately 40 seconds, that you must not be morbidly preoccupied with it, let us say for 90 seconds, and that you must now give your attention to another fragment of news or a commercial. Television did not invent the now this worldview. As I have tried to show, it is the offspring of the intercourse between telegraphy and photography. But it is through television that it has been nurtured and brought to a perverse maturity. Oh, and go ahead and in the comments, volunteer if you would like to read, but only volunteer to read if you think it'll be helpful for you. You know, you don't volunteer if you feel like it distracts you from paying attention when you're trying to read. You know what I mean? So like, not everybody needs to. It's not like a all hands on deck kind of thing. We only need a few people. For on television, nearly every half hour is a discrete event, separated in content, context, and emotional texture from what precedes and follows it. In part because television sells its time in seconds and minutes. In part because television must use images rather than words. In part because its audience can move freely to and from the television set. Programs are structured so that almost each 8-minute segment may stand as a complete event in itself. Viewers are rarely required to carry over any thought or feeling from one parcel of time to another. And so I think several of you probably missed what Kedem had said at the beginning about how nowadays it seems like there's not so much of this now, this stuff. And I wanted to say, yeah, when they do it, it's saying the quiet part out loud. But every time you swipe on your phone from one thing to another thing, you are doing this move, I think. And that's kind of what I want to be thinking about here. But I also want to be thinking about what AO is getting at with the structure of time being different now. All right. And then since Ruiz is the postman guy here at TU, and when I say that, I mean, I've been into Postman for a long time, but I feel like Ruiz was going harder for a while, and so he's been thinking about this a lot. I want to say, let's have you go for like at least 3 paragraphs here, Ruiz.
Okay, I think you ended on consider, right? Consider, for example.
No, actually,
Of course.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Of course, in television's presentation of the news of the day, we may see the now this mode of discourse in its boldest and most embarrassing form. For there, we are presented not only with fragmented news, but news without context, without consequences, without value, and therefore without essential seriousness. That is to say, news as pure entertainment. Consider, for example, how you would proceed if you were given the opportunity to produce a television news show for any station concerned to attract the largest possible audience. You would, first, choose a cast of players, each of whom has a face that is both likable and credible. Those who apply would, in fact, submit to their 8x10, would submit their 8x10 glossies, from which you would eliminate those whose countenances are not suitable for nightly display. That's a pretty hilarious sentence. Sorry. This means that you will exclude women who are not beautiful or who are over the age of 50, men who are bald, all people who are overweight or whose noses are too long or whose eyes are too close together. You will try, in other words, to assemble a cast of talking hairdos. At the very least, you will want those faces. At the very least, you will want those whose faces would not be unwelcome on a magazine cover. Christine Kraft has just such a face, and so she applied for the co-anchor position on KMBC TV in Kansas City. According to a lawyer who represented her in a sexism suit she later brought against the station, the management of KMBC TV loved Christine's look. She was accordingly hired in January 1981. She was fired in August 1981 because research indicated that her appearance hampered viewer acceptance. What exactly does hampered viewer acceptance mean? And what does it have to do with the news? Hampered viewer acceptance means the same thing for television news as it does for any television show. Viewers do not like looking at the performer. It also means that viewers do not believe the performer. She lacks credibility. In the case of a theatrical performance, we have a sense of what that implies. The actor does not persuade the audience that he or she is the character being portrayed. But what does lack of credibility imply in the case of a news show? What character is a co-anchor playing? And how do we decide that the performance lacks verisimilitude? Does the audience believe that the newscaster is lying? That what is reported did not in fact happen? That something important is being concealed? I gotta take this paragraph too before passing it. It is frightening to think that this may be so, that the perception of the truth of a report rests heavily on the acceptability of the newscaster. In the ancient world, there was a tradition of banishing or killing the bearer of bad tidings. Does the television news show restore, in a curious form, this tradition? Do we banish those who tell us the news when we do not care for the face of the teller? Does television countermand the warnings we once received about the fallacy of the ad hominem argument?
Now, the whole question about how this applies to the Zoom call and our performance is one thing, and it's interesting. The other thing I'm going to want to drill into, so I'm just planting the seed right now, is the relation between immediate gratification, instantaneity, and the now this. Because I think that all three of those are different pieces of a puzzle. And I think as far as ongoing research goes, like I'm not saying I've figured out how the pieces all fit together. I'm just saying instantaneity, now this, and immediate gratification. Those three things are related, and we'll get into it a little bit, but let's first keep reading for a bit. So we'll go Ian 2 paragraphs, Rebecca 2 paragraphs, and then I'll come back in. And so we're at the one that starts, Ian, it starts with if the answer.
If the answer to any of these questions is even a qualified yes, then here is an issue worthy of the attention of epistemologists. Stated in its simplest form, it is that television provides a new, or possibly restore an old definition of truth. The credibility of the teller is the ultimate test of the truth of a proposition. Credibility here does not refer to the past record of the teller for making statements that have survived the rigors of reality testing. It refers only to the impression of sincerity, authenticity, vulnerability, or attractiveness. Choose one or more, conveyed by the actor reporter. This is a matter this is a matter of considerable importance, for it goes beyond the question of how truth is perceived on television's news shows. If on television, credibility replaces reality as the decisive test of truth telling, political leaders need not trouble themselves very much with reality provided that their performances consistently generate a sense of verisimilitude. I suspect, for example, that the dishonor that now shrouds Richard Nixon results not from the fact that he lied, but that on television he looked like a liar, which, if true, should bring no comfort to anyone, not even veteran Nixon haters. For the alternative possibilities are that one may look like a liar but be telling the truth, or even worse, look like a truth teller but in fact be lying. One more or
Oh, it was a two puff. Yeah, no, Rebecca, go for it. As a producer.
As a producer of as a producer of a television news show, you would be well aware of these matters and would be careful to choose your cast on the basis of criteria used by David McKerracher or other successful impresarios. Like them, you would then turn your attention to staging the show on principles that maximize entertainment value. You would, for example, select a musical theme for the show. All television news programs begin and end are somewhere in between punctuated with music. I have found very few Americans who regard this custom as peculiar, which fact I have taken as evidence for the dissolution of lines of demarcation between serious public discourse and entertainment. What has music to do with the news? Why is it there? Is it there, I assume, for the same reason music is used in the theaters and films? To create a mood and provide a leitmotif for the entertainment. If there were no music, as is the case when any television program is interrupted for a news flash, viewers would expect something truly alarming, possibly life-altering. But as long as music is there as a frame for the program, the viewer is comforted to believe that there is nothing to be greatly alarmed about. That, in fact, the events that are reported have as much relation to reality as do scenes in a play. This perception of a news show as a stylized, dramatic performance whose content has been staged largely to entertain is reinforced by several other features, including the fact that the average length of any story is 45 seconds. While brevity does not always suggest triviality, in this case it clearly does. It is simply not possible to convey a sense of seriousness about any event if its implications are exhausted in less than 1 minute's time. In fact, it is quite obvious that TV news has no intention of suggesting that any story has any implications, for that would require viewers to continue to think about what it is done, and therefore obstruct their attending to the next story that awaits panting in the wings. In any case, viewers are not provided with much opportunity to be distracted from the next story, since in all likelihood it will consist of some film footage. Pictures have little difficulty in overwhelming words and short-circuiting introspection. As a television producer, you would be certain to give both prominence and precedence to any event for which there is some sort of visual documentation. A suspected killer being brought into a police station, the angry face of a cheated consumer, a barrel going over Niagara Falls with a person alleged to be in it, the president disembarking from a helicopter on the White House lawn, These are always fascinating or amusing and easily satisfy the requirements of an entertaining show. It is, of course, not necessary that the visuals actually document the point of a story. Neither is it necessary to explain why such images are intruding themselves on public consciousness. Film footage justifies itself, as every television producer well knows.
Awesome. Thank you. Now I'm going to skip the next paragraph and go straight to the one that starts with, the viewers also know that no matter how grave any fragment of news may appear, for example, on the day I write, a Marine Corps general has declared that nuclear war between the United States and Russia is inevitable, it will shortly be followed by a series of commercials that will, in an instant, diffuse the import of the news. In fact, render it largely banal. This is a key element in the structure of a news program and all by itself refutes any claim that television news is designed as a serious form of public discourse. Now, the reason I jumped ahead and only read that fragment, first of all, I know it's kind of like actually now I'm doing the now this, I'm like chopping up the reading, but I want to actually do that. I want to skip to a little bit further in the chapter, and then we'll actually finish the chapter. We're not going to finish it in its entirety, but I want to say this example of nuclear war is inevitable. Now a Burger King commercial. Like that is, I think, a sort of placeholder in your mind if you want to bookmark, you know, the dynamic we're getting at. Anytime you want to think about the now thisification, that's a way to do it. Like it's the Palestine babies' heads blown off, and then you're watching cute cat videos effect, right? It's like a blender of signification. Okay. Now I want to go a little, maybe like a few pages further. You might have to word search to find exactly where I'm going to here, Kerem. But you know, he goes into this whole thing about how people are trying to be informed. What they're getting is a kind of disinformation, but it's not lies. It's not even fake news. It's just not news, because real news in like this more rich sense would be like the townsfolk all go down to the town square and they do the trumpet, and then you know the person reads the king's decree, and then everyone's like able to like react to it like live right then and there, versus everyone being isolated in their little goon caves and getting their news in this sort of fragmented way where it's all trivialized. So what I want to go to is page 111, the middle paragraph, and we'll take it from there. I'll read this paragraph and then hand it back to you, Ruiz. You take it for a couple and then pass it back to Ian, and then it'll probably be over. I do not mean that the trivialization of public information is all accomplished on television. I mean that television is the paradigm for our conception of public information. As the printing press did in an earlier time, television has achieved the power to define the form in which news must come, and it has also defined how we shall respond to it. In presenting news to us packaged as a vaudeville, television induces other media to do the same, so that the total information environment begins to mirror television. Oh, he's away. So like we'll just go straight to you, Ian, if you're able to go for it.
Yeah, my
Starting
dog
with
is attacking me, but I try. For example, America's newest and highly successful national newspaper, USA Today, is modeled precisely on the format of television. It is sold on the street in receptacles that look like television sets. Its stories are uncommonly short. Its design leans heavily on pictures, charts, and other graphics, some of them printed in various colors. Its weather maps are visible and a visual delight. Its sports section includes enough pointless statistics to distract a computer. As a consequence, USA Today, which began publication in September 1992, has become the third largest daily in the United States. As of July 1984, according to the Audit Bureau of Circulations, moving quickly to overtake the Daily News and the Wall Street Journal. Journalists of a more traditional bent have criticized it for its superficiality and theatrics, but the paper's editors remain steadfast in their disregard of typographic standards. The paper's editor-in-chief, John Quinn, has said, "We are not up to undertaking projects of the dimensions needed to win prizes. They don't give awards for the best investigative paragraph." Here is an astonishing tribute to the resonance of television epistemology. In the age of television, the paragraph is becoming the basic unit of news in print media. Moreover, Mr. Quinn need not fret too long about being deprived of awards, as other newspapers join in the transformation. The time cannot be far off when awards will be given for the best investigative sentence. It needs also to be noted here that new and successful magazines such as People and Us are not only examples of television-oriented print media, but have had an extraordinary ricochet effect on television itself. Whereas television taught the magazines that the news is nothing but entertainment, the magazines have taught television that nothing but entertainment is news. Television programs such as Entertainment Tonight turn information about entertainers and celebrities into serious cultural content, so that the circle begins to close, but the form and content of news become entertainment. Just quick note here, this made me think a lot of Professor Georg Muller, the prophylicity, and but yeah, like just bracket that up. You want to read, Rebecca?
Yes. Let's see here.
Then
Radio.
just take it to the end.
Okay. Radio, of course, is the least likely medium to join in the descent into a Huxleyan world of technological narcotics. It is, after all, particularly well suited to the transmission of rational, complex language. Nonetheless, and even if we disregard radio's captivation by the music industry, we appear to be left with the chilling fact that such language as radio allows us to hear is increasingly primitive, fragmented, and largely aimed at invoking visceral response. Which is to say, it is the linguistic analog to the ubiquitous rock music that is radio's principal source of income. As I write, the trend in call-in shows is for the host to insult callers whose language does not, in itself, go much beyond humanoid grunting. Such programs have little content, as this word used to be defined, and are merely of archaeological. Hold on, let me read this sentence one more time. Such programs have little content, as this word used to be defined, and are merely of archaeological interest in that they give us a sense of what a dialogue among Neanderthals might have been like. More to the point, the language of radio newscasts has become, under the influence of television, increasingly decontextualized and discontinuous, so that the possibility of anyone's knowing about the world, as against merely knowing of it, is effectively blocked. In New York City, radio station WINS entreats its listeners to give us 22 minutes and we'll give you the world. This is said without irony, and its audience, we may assume, does not regard the slogan as a conception of a disordered mind. And so we move rapidly into an information environment which may rightly be called trivial pursuit. As the game of that name uses facts as a source of amusement, so do our sources of news. It has been demonstrated many times that a culture can survive misinformation and false opinion. It has not yet been demonstrated whether a culture can survive if it takes the measure of the world in 22 minutes, or if the value of its news is determined by the number of laughs it provides.
All right. Now I have a bunch of questions that I can use to stir the pot. But I first want to ask anyone who hasn't read, who's been listening, who's been reading, who's been thinking about it while this is going, if you have anything off the top of your heads.
Yeah, I think when he's talking about how television teaches other mediums, um, like how to um, not really inform is not the right word, but you know what I mean. Like I was thinking of his phrase, his I don't know if it's like I guess it's like an updating of McLuhan's "the medium is the message" to "the medium is the metaphor," because well, metaphors are just a metaphor is just like you associate one thing with another thing. And if television, so like if someone is learning about the world through television and television is in this entertainment mode, then they associate the learning of the world with entertainment. And so, and that, so they've like, it gets people to like internalize that association where they come to expect it from other ways of, learning about the world. That's what it made me think of.
Yeah, and the term he used was taught. So television teaches the magazines, and the magazines teach television. So he's talking about this ricochet effect. And so then, the next question then, AO, and I'll just ask you direct, is like, what's the immediate, connection, I guess, to the smartphone? What does TV teach the smartphone? And has the smartphone taught TV?
Well, I think the smartphone is just like a intensifier of like what TV was doing. And I guess to rebound, the rebound effect, I'm trying to think. I don't know, maybe how sometimes like tweets are news? I don't know. Is that? No.
That might be. That might be. And I have an idea, but I don't want to lead you all with it. You know what I mean? So I want to first step back and ask any other kind of thoughts coming up for anybody here.
Yeah, I had a thought. Um, just once again, like sort of thinking about what has television taught the smartphone. Um, I was immediately thinking about Reels and like shorts on YouTube and or but more Instagram in my experience. Maybe TikTok. I don't really use TikTok, so I can't really speak much on that. I s- I dodged that mind virus. But the with like say Instagram, there'll be people who will share things, right? In their stories where it's like some kind of a report on this or report on that or the thing that's going on. Well, what's the maximum amount of time most of those things are? They're like 45 seconds. So that's about the length of what would have been like the short news segments, right? And so they're doing the same thing, only it's even more rapid fire, even more discontinuous, right? Um, and another thing I was thinking about is how I don't remember when this started for me, but I remember like watching the news post like internet boom. Maybe like I don't know, sometime in probably earlier, but I'm gonna go ahead and just say like 2010s, early 2010s, where I had noticed that the editing of television programs seemed to become snappier and faster, like cuts from one thing to the next, sort of became a bit more fluid. I also think about the way in which you now have these short statements at the bottom of the screen that like are keeping up with what's being said, and it's like it's almost like a short tweet or something, right? So like every 5 seconds into the into the segment, there's like another little like short snippet that is like iterating some aspect of what was being said, but as like a very short like sentence. And then just one last thing, thinking back, like you mentioned tweets. I'm thought of like there might like what Poston was saying about how there might be like award-winning sentences. And I'm like, tweets are a good example of that, but also like when you get a notification on your phone for a news article, like I can't say how many times like Google News or whatever has these notifications on my phone and it's just a sentence. And I might look it up, but it's easy enough for me to just look at that one sentence and think I've gotten some piece of the news.
100%. I will literally say so, and I'll just say the sentence of the thing to like if someone's into the news, I'll say so. They're making war plans over text messages now, huh? It's like, did I really read articles about that? No. Hey, Ann. Well, let's go real quick before we go to Ian because she's harder to pin down here.
Yeah, I almost want to like think about all of this, and then when you guys were reading the Postman, I was thinking about, you know, like the now this, and you see it on the news, but then with the algorithms and the TikTok and Instagram, like every scroll is a now this, and it's going to radically play with your emotions. So we're all getting presented like information, wildly different information, like every second, especially with how I think extreme are like the algorithms play into the extremities of, or showcase the extremities of the left and the right. Like at least in the US, conservatives are like on about something, oh, Armageddon's coming, the left is trying to do this, liberals are on about something, oh, Trump is Hitler, if you're a conservative and voted for him, you're a Nazi. um and I just like have to ask, how is this impacting like our souls, like the humanness of us, to be presented with not only so much information but so much emotional information. Like a lot of it is scary, I feel like. And so that was just my immediate thought, is yeah, like thinking about the way that this impacts our souls. And then we say, like every time there's a school shooting in the US, it's like, oh, these happen so often, we're just so numb to it. And it's like, well, are we numb to it because it happens so often? Or is the medium and the now this of finding out about it part of why we're numb, is because we don't have like a national day of mourning for a school shooting? It's like you literally have to find out about it on Twitter or on Instagram or via a news article, and then you go, oh, damn, and then you're on to the next thing. Like you don't even allow yourself to process. So are we all emotionally stunted now because we don't process news? And like in the beginning chapters of Amusing Ourselves to Death, there's the, you know, information action ratio, and this idea that, well, maybe we shouldn't even, or I don't think he argues whether or not we should or shouldn't, but like there used to be a time where we didn't find out about what was going on in other parts of the world or even other parts of the country. It was just like whatever was happening in your local area. And so whether or not it's good or bad to like be keeping up with what's going on in Palestine, so and so place, like that's up for conversation. But yeah, we're always presented with like this terrible thing happening, this terrible thing happening. It's like, are we even able to process that, or are we just emotionally numb because it's all the time and then there's no time to process it? And how does that impact our actual relationships when someone something amazing? Like, does that transfer into how we
Uh-oh. You legged out right there at the end
other
there.
people in our emotional events? Okay.
Sorry, the last
Hopefully
part.
I'm
What did you say at the
here.
end?
Oh, just does that impact our like emotional availability with other people? And also like, I don't know, yeah, we get presented with so much terrible information. People just like trauma dump on TikTok, even if you take it away from the national news and just think about the personal. And it's like, should we be doing that? Does that impact our ability to be emotional or vulnerable with other people in our lives when it's always happening? We don't have time to even process it on the internet.
All right, and then Ian.
Yeah, so I think something curious about the TV as a medium, I think like it kind of like perfected itself with the nowadays and the format of the news, that even if you watch like sports centers, it like Sports Center, like on ESPN, it is the exact same format as watching CNN or like Ninja Warrior. Like it is the same format, which I think there is, I don't know what it is, but it's something like I maybe to elaborate. And then I think too that if the new medium of like social media and stuff like that learned anything from the news, is that, or from the format, like from the TV itself, is that sometimes, or it seems like most of the time, the TV, what it presents, it is way more real and has way more influence in the real world than the real world. So I think with social media, that was like more like technified, and you have like influencers or I mean, today a tweet literally shapes reality, right? Like if Trump tweets something, the stock market does go down. So it like I feel like it received like a new, or not a new, but like a bigger power and effect on the quote unquote like real world, because I think sometimes we, or not we, but like there is a tendency to make a separation between like digital or virtual, like non-real and like real world. But I feel like it's like they are bleeding into each other, and sometimes the virtual or the digital has more impact or more tangible effects on quote unquote like meat or fleshy reality. And also, I guess the what I was saying before, right? Like how it also taught us to have conversations, so that are basically derived of like second order observation, that then that led to prophilicity and create our brands or how we want to be profiled.
That pro-felicity connection, Ian, is something I want to come right back to because in a way it gets to what I was going to turn to, but let's go to Kerem first. And also Federico, if you got something on anything that's been going on here before I bring in this next move of the conversation, we'll go to you too. But yeah, Kerem.
Yeah, I'm wondering if that was the thing that I'm going to mention was the case in the past, because I think television got something maybe from the the social media or the internet or the phone, as like, we have like this niche consumer thing happening on the phone, on the internet, right? And I don't know if this was the case in the past, but now you have like certain channels for certain type of dispositions, right? But I don't think this was the case maybe in the past, because I remember when I was a child, like my family would watch every channel, and you would move around the channels, you would be able to watch it without any sort of like idea about like, oh, this channel is this thought and this channel is that thought, right? And then at some point it turned into this like, now channels have their own like dispositions, and I don't know, it's super weird. It's like, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you bring that in because it does relate to the gerrymandering Befindlichkeit thing, and that kind of relates to the thing that Ian just brought up that we'll come back to too. Though I think it gets to another thing that's a lot deeper that we probably won't have time to get into as much here, but it's a good segue to what we'll be getting into with the gerrymandering Befindlichkeit seminar that'll hopefully be coming up soon. So, yeah, Federico.
Yeah, I was thinking, I like the connection with Reels and TikToks, and I find it interesting that when we scroll, we are often the ones saying now this. It's not anymore the TV presenter. It's us who don't wait for the end of the reel and just go to the next one, which I find interesting. And yeah, yeah, as Karim mentioned, also it's interesting how in television you have the now this, but at least we're watching the same now this. Now we're watching different reels, different contents, etc. Yeah, so.
I was just like imagining what if while you were talking, I was like, yeah, I get it. Now this, and I could swipe. And then Rebecca starts talking, and then I go, yeah. And then now this, and then Ian starts talking, and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, now this. And then I was thinking, like, we kind of, I mean, at least I do this on YouTube. I'll be listening to somebody, and sometimes I just go skip. I'll just skip. I'll like keep tapping to kind of scrub through to get to something more interesting because I'm just like, I get it. I don't care. Let's come on, let's go. And it's weird. And I don't know if it really connects too much, but I want to take it back to this idea that the smartphone's just an intensification of the TV. And I don't want to be annoying with this. So in my classroom, one of my students who's one of the most involved, like he takes this stuff pretty seriously. That's what he said. He was talking about how it's just an intensification. He's like, yeah, the smartphone is just an intensification of this. Now we all have a TV in our pocket. And it's like, well, that word just here, though, is a powerful word because it's saying just an intensification. Okay, but what if something's getting covered up when we think that it's just an intensification? Because what I want to argue is that it's not just an intensification. It is an intensification. But there are new components here, new dynamics, new mechanisms that completely, I don't want to say completely change it from what Postman is talking about, because what he's talking about is sublated, so to speak. It's still part. But by focusing on other mediums and using them as metaphors, we might miss something new about this smartphone thing, about the internet age. And so, the part where I say I don't want to be annoying, I know exactly what I'm driving at. But does anybody off the top of their head have something where you think you know what I'm driving at? Because it might be something that I haven't even thought of, and I would like to hear if you have something that you think is very new that's different from TV about the smartphone.
Well, I mean, big data changes everything. How data is like we're more involved, I think, than TV. Like it's our inputs that are being collected and like sold to like data brokers and stuff like that. Like I think that's very different. Yeah, I think that makes it very different.
Yeah, so I hadn't even that's not where I was gonna go, so that's dope. I'm glad you brought it in because it is. And that's where the book Surveillance Valley and the book
Yeah.
Being Like a State and the book The Taming of Chance. Each one is a very radically different approach into the question of big data, but all three show you how the Venn diagram between state and capital, big data is like right in the middle between both of them. So it's like state and capital are usually kind of in tension against each other. They're not always in alliance. But when it comes to big data, they have shared interests. Yeah. Karim.
I don't know, this is like too obvious, but like I want to mention it, which is like as a form, you have the smartphone 24/7 with you. You don't have that with television, right? So this is super interesting because then it has a lot of other implications if you think about it on like the question of human, the question of our relation to technology, the question of how we perceive the world, and so on. And I think McLuhan was like maybe very useful here because like it was talking about the as an apparatus, the medium as an apparatus, and now it's basically a real apparatus in a way, like 24/7 with us, right? So I don't know if this like where you're going with it, but at least this is very interesting to me. Yeah.
Well, I'll just go ahead and say it actually, but I mean, to say, Karim, you're actually saying, in part, I think what Virilio's getting at in The Last Vehicle, where basically he's talking about how you'll never leave, you'll never actually move. The world comes to you. You don't go to the world. And so but of course, the crude or crass conclusion is you're on a toilet, you never leave the toilet, the world comes to you on the toilet. And the thing is like when the living room had the TV and you had to sit on the couch and everyone in the world was becoming the couch potato, but you still had to get up and go to the bathroom, right? And now it's like, no, if you see somebody is saying something online, the likelihood that they are shitting or pissing is extremely high. And I do wonder at the level of form what that does. But the thing I'll just get to and say is like, okay, I would still say that that's in some sense maybe an intensification of the current of what we're getting at with TV. And maybe prophilicity, as Ian brings up, connects. Like this is about you curating your profile that you show to the world, very much like the house that flies the pride flag, or the house that flies the blue thin line flag. It's like that person is telling you they watch a certain kind of news or that they care about a certain set of issues. So it's they're curating their profile using lawn ornaments. But the thing is it's much more the case that they're curating their identity by what they swipe past quickly and what they watch and rewatch and then carefully like, and then maybe sometimes bookmark or save. And it gets weirder on Facebook and Instagram because other people can see the stuff that you're liking, or they can see the stuff you're commenting on. And so the stuff that you're liking or commenting on doesn't just tame the algorithm to or train the algorithm to show you certain things as opposed to other things. It's like also it's saying something about you. And so, I'm a subscriber to Catalyst Journal. Ooh. I'm also a subscriber to The Week now. Ooh. What does that say about me? Right? Well, and it actually says something. I mean, it's actually saying with Catalyst, it says I'm still interested in the intellectual side of the left. And with The Week, it's saying I'm trying to give a fuck about the news in the world, and I'm actually trying to have better conversations with Benjamin Studebaker on why I left, because he's been subscribing to this fucking magazine since he was like in diapers or whatever. And so, that's what it says about me. Of course, is it true? Well, it doesn't matter because this isn't about authenticity. It's about what I'm trying to tell the world about myself. And also, and this goes beyond that, I would say, it can become a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way, right? It can become like prefigurative, and then you actually start doing that. There's also the dangerous opposite effect where that doesn't happen. Because I've been subscribing to Catalyst for a year. I haven't read a single one of their articles. So it's not actually prefiguring me doing that. It's like by paying for it, I'm saying I care about it. And in some vague sense, it's true, but I'm not really following through. And so I have to think about that more. Okay. But, and now, Ian, I said, I don't know if this directly relates. And so I'll kind of like throw this back on you to ask you if this, what I'm about to say, relates to prophilicity or not. Because a lot of people, I just explained what prophilicity is. It's the curation of your identity through making a profile. Okay. But with all that said, what I think is the newest thing about the smartphone is perceived democracy, or the simulacrum of being able to participate in the global square, in the village square. And so the way that I go to this is by saying that critical theory, guys like Adorno, one of their big critiques of television was it was making people passive because they lay there and they watch it and they're just like these empty receptacles receiving the information. It's all one directional. People can't respond. And that's part of the reason that Guy Debord in Society of the Spectacle is saying that it's making people passive. And if you remember when Mikey gave that special lecture a year ago on pseudo activity versus passivity, when he was using Debord versus Baudrillard, well, yeah, those are both true. And then I always take it to the next level and say there's a dialectic between passivity and pseudo activity, where pseudo activity in the fringe minority drives on passivity in the mass majority, and vice versa for every issue, for every single thing. Okay. Well, we all have the idea that we're able to respond instantly. So that's the connection to instantaneity, which means immediate feedback, which means the illusion of not just immediate gratification, because it's not just gratification. Like you might be attention deprived or seeking recognition. And so by developing a relationship with a YouTube or Twitch streamer, you're able to, over time, get that instant feedback. And this is the most true with Twitch people. If you ever stream on Twitch, you will learn instantly. If you don't instantly engage with them, they'll just talk about you in like often a way like it's kind of rude or it's unsettling, because yeah, they actually will feel insulted that you don't instantly respond to them. And in fact, they'll start complaining about your latency and internet speeds if you don't respond in like 10 seconds to what they said. Like they think it's a problem with your speeds. And then if you talk for 2 minutes without looking at what they said, they think you're drunk. I'm dead serious. Like this is a huge thing on Twitch. For months I was dealing with it. It's like, no, bitch, I'm going to fucking just talk. I'm going to say what I want to say because I'm following a train of thought here and I'm trying to get to a point. But because the medium, especially on Twitch, is structured so that it's like you're not just playing video games with someone else who's playing video games. No, you're hanging out with your big brother. You're hanging out with your big sister, and they're supposed to give you instantaneous feedback. There's like this, you're shaping them, they're shaping you, and you're constantly in this simulacrum of a back and forth. Okay. And so if Adorno and Debord and all these other critical theorists were thinking TV's one directional, and that's a problem, now we can say the smartphone gives us a sense that it's not one directional and gives us a sense that it is reciprocal and that we are democratically able to represent ourselves and intervene. And I say a sense because in a sort of sense it's true, but also in a sort of sense, maybe it's not true. And so I'm curious about that. We'll close out in like 10 or 15 minutes, maybe 5, but we'll go to Rebecca first. And then I want to know your thoughts about the ability to respond.
Let's see. So originally I had my hand up because I was thinking about the not just, like, it's just intensification of TV. But like it was things we all have already thought about. Like it's the fact that we participate in the very in like you see what you choose to see. Like you scroll, you select this or that person's stories, you know. Um, Also, as you were getting to, you comment, right? You feel as though you're able to involve yourself in a public forum in of some sense. And also the algorithmic siloing, like that's another big thing, especially because like whereas before, I mean, there were television stations that did fit specific worldviews that maybe even predates, I think, a little bit, like the focus on social media, um, just to some extent. But like it does it for you actively, right? Like funneling you into specific forms of content, right? And that's unique. That's different. That's not just like TV. Because with TV, you choose which channel you want to watch. You choose which bubble you want to live in. But with the social media and the phone, it actively forms a bubble around you, learning from you, and does this all in the background. But getting to the responding thing, right? That is very interesting when you think about that. Because there is a very real sense in that you are really able to sort of like talk to someone. You can even start actual conversations potentially. I mean, it is there. But a lot of it is feeling like you're having a conversation with someone, and the satisfaction that comes from feeling like you've actually engaged. Best example of this is when you see people that leave a comment, and it's like they think they're correcting you or something. I think I think a lot of people have like fallen into that kind of trap where they think that, oh, this is actually wrong what you're saying, or like I don't know if I agree with that, right? And it's like, look, we're not having a real conversation where you can disagree and I can like come back and back up what I have to say. Because as soon as you actually do, like if someone says, "Oh, like you're wrong about that," as soon as you do engage, I mean, like there's no reason why they have to take you seriously, and there's no reason why you have to take them seriously. There's a sort of way in which there is a public discourse that's available, but but it is without impact. Like it's a public discourse that disavows what it means to even have public discourse. So I guess I'll go and I'll leave that at that.
Ruiz.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, I was kind of running around here, so I think I have my thoughts a little jumbled here, but with
Well, really quick, as you collect them,
Yeah.
I just want to say, Rebecca, you started that thought with it's a big thing, and then you were kind of working through it, and I think what you got me to at the end there is like, yeah, so it is like public, but it's also like not. You do get to respond, but it is trivialized. Going back to that word trivialized, right? And I don't want anyone to get the impression here that this is the end of it. I really want you all kind of thinking. I really want to break the feeling that you're watching TV here, and that you also might get to say something or perform something, and then we've all just said our piece, and then we all move on. What I hope to break through. I'm not saying this about you, Rebecca. I'm saying every one of us here thinking about this question in particular, and then thinking back about, with all the stuff that's happened with CMT at Theory Underground and the trajectory of where we're going And not just where we're trying to do more asynchronous simultaneity, but we're also trying to do more innovative IRL kinds of events. And these things are not separated, right? Like the constitution of a genuine milieu is a kind of wavelength that goes beyond these asynchronous and simultaneous whatever fucking moments, right? Like and it's iterative. The dredge is iterative between online and then IRL, and it's a learning process, right? So with all, and part of that is also the actual volumes with the publishing, right? And I did say in that lecture that there's like this publishing side of this is part of the iterative process. We get together, we also read each other, you know, and it's slower. It takes more deliberate work and sort of a patience. And so what I'm trying to break through here is like, this is not a one-off conversation about, say, Postman or a change happening at Theory Underground with the structure. What I'm hoping to incite in everyone is a much deeper thought about like literally what Rebecca was just getting at, which is, yeah, you are able to respond. You're able to respond in the context of a Zoom call. You're able to respond in the context of a live stream chat. You're able to respond in the comment section. You're able to respond in the Discord. You're able to respond through DMs. You're able to, in some cases, some of you can call me, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, yada, yada, yada. Also, though, going back to what Ian was saying, it's much more important that you can actually write something deep that's a real contribution to what we're getting at. And so I just kind of wanted to tie all those pieces together there and bring back that this is a research project in motion, and that I have a lot less in terms of conclusions and a lot more in terms of hunches and sources that I'm bringing back from over the last 10 years at what I consider to be the right time, or what I'm hoping will be the right time for sort of stirring the pot. So, okay, with all that said, then, yeah, David, you're welcome back.
Thanks. As far as kind of like the responses, I like what Rebecca had said, and it kind of there's kind of a thought I always have about like the internet and social media kind of being like one big survey that we're constantly just participating in. Like whenever you log into social media, you're just taking like a constant survey that never ends. So like that's that it kind of brought that back up for me about how it's like there is like an interaction, and it definitely can be an interaction, but to like a lot of content creators or even TV channels, they just have a whole staff that's just like, oh, look at these oh, maybe we could make an episode on that. That'll be good. So it's almost like we feel like we're participating. And again, sometimes we are. I mean, it's hard to pin any of this stuff down, but it definitely also can be used as like this constant survey that is constantly being taken. Similar to like the plebiscite that you had mentioned. I think someone has said plebiscite. I'm sorry, I'm like mixing everybody's responses now together. But in a way, that's, when everybody kind of like something goes viral and then there's like a huge response to it, it's almost like people are like standing up against something like that. Like something went viral and now it's like an anti-viral response to it in a sense, which I see almost as like a mob survey being taken in a sense. Like, oh, look at this big group of people that got real riled up about that. And then kind of something that I don't know if it quite fits, but I want to drop it in here just to maybe have it be something that we can think about further at some point. But as far as like the participation of like with, the difference of the relationship with the television is that the television, or one of the differences, is when television was kind of like the medium. I see it almost as it was like a time of, how Neil Postman makes and I don't know if it's Neil Postman himself that makes the that he points out the difference between literacy when it was just like monks and only like really specialized people that knew how to read. And I think he called that like craft literacy. And then when the printing press came about, there was a switch into like a social literacy, where now it wasn't just like a super niche kind of group of people with power that were the readers, but like you had to just be someone who read in order to like kind of get along in society. And it seems like maybe at this point, an interesting thing to think about in terms of what we're talking about here is almost like we're going through like the same thing, but with broadcasting in a sense. We're like we're going from an era where if you wanted to get like on the screen, you had to have like hundreds of thousands of dollars of equipment, and it was basically a craft broadcasting. Where now essentially we're moving into like almost like social broadcasting, where it's almost becoming like instead of learning how to read and write, you're learning how to like watch and record in a sense. So yeah, that's all I got.
On the connection right there, by the way, for people who are less deep in the postman sauce, is to say that the move from books to audio video is a move from deliberation and reflection and critical thinking to the ability to take something and put it at arm's reach and take up different perspectives to it, versus images. Like imagist thinking is just emotion. You just have big emotions about orange man, orange man, orange man bad. It's actually a really, really perfect example to go with Trump and how, you know, the Trump derangement syndrome sort of resistance, though of course justified if you care about a society where people actually communicate and try to choose a future. It's like Trump's obviously post communication with people. Well, yeah, but also the people who constantly go back to just the fact that he's orange and that they don't like it. Like that's really an indicator of their media wired brains. They're not able to put it at arm's reach and talk about it analytically or within an interpretive context or think about anything more going on. They can go into, oh, well, I don't like these executive orders he's passing, and I don't like this, and I don't like that. But the fact that people do just go back to the appearance is a perfect metonym for what we're getting at, which is that TV brains and TikTok brains replace literate brains with image emotion reactions. So it's like you see an image, you have a programmed emotive response. And that I think is what Postman is most alarmed by. Yeah, that plus the now thisification, right? And so in teaching as a subversive activity, he's going to critique all these things about the schooling system, but in teaching as a conserving activity, he's going to argue, okay, but because our society is constant change, and it is this now thisification of image, emotion, reaction, the necessary thing is to bring back propositional thinking, positions, and context. We need to bring back that kind of bookish literacy and do it on the shared basis of a canon. And that is the task of schooling, of a school that's doing its actual proper function. And if it's not doing that, then it actually just ends up mirroring TV, which is, oh, math at this time, and now this, history at this time, and now this. And it is just like, what's the point? What's the unifying factor here, guys? Like, that's what he's trying to get at. All right, Karim.
Yeah. I don't know if this will build upon that, but I want to build upon what Rebecca said, and I'm sure it is somewhat related to what you said as well. And I want to think about like, we mentioned the response, right? And how it is like a seeming communication, kind of like response is essentially a communication between people, right? And then it's seeming on the social on the internet, like you respond, but it's not like kind of taken seriously. And I want to think like what makes in real life, what makes people take seriously each other, right? What if I talk to you in real life, or if I talk to my friend in real life, what makes them take me seriously? What is the context of them like genuinely communicating with me, right? And how we can bring that onto this social internet space, right? That's maybe like the more constructive approach that maybe we should take in a way. And that brings in, we need to have a canon. We do like these activities like exegetical readings and so on. Like those are part of it. And there's maybe some other things that we can add up if we think about in terms of like, what makes a response a real response, what makes a communication a real communication in real life, and how that can be translated to here, right? So, yeah, like this educational part of it is there, but maybe there's something even more that can be add up to it, right? And I don't know that yet. I'm thinking like, but yeah, I don't know if this makes sense. It resonated with you, or yeah.
I'd like to close out, and on that note, say thank you, everybody. I'm gonna hit on a couple things that I hope stir some thoughts, and I want to say I want you to try to bridge this conversation into something like taking a walk or writing, something that is good for you, yeah, and also that will hopefully build back into this more real milieu style discourse that we're trying to cultivate here. So there's a couple things on that. One is, if you actually start thinking you are going to be together with us doing something IRL within the next year, that might help you take it more seriously, right? It might help you break out of thinking of it as a one-off Zoom call. And so on that note, I'll say there's likely to be something special in September that you would have to travel to. And there will be much more information on that soon. And when I say something special, I mean really special. All right. And then the same would go for the middle of next April. And the nature of these two events will be very different. But in both cases, the stuff that we're publishing, the stuff that will be up for the turn, the stuff that you're writing, that we're reading, that you're reading, and using for your own writing, like all of that stuff informs and creates a much richer basis for these conversations that are these conversations then become not just richer, but also feed back into that formation for you, right? And I'll definitely want to come back to big data soon. I don't know if we'll get much more into it next week as the follow-up to this conversation. It's still an experiment, doing the asynchronous thing and then having a more than one discussion on it. I love that we did not really talk about anything that we talked about with the programmers. Like this is the second discussion that followed up from that lecture, and it's totally different. And so that's cool. The next one could be totally different. And well, it will be, because we're not going to read the now this chapter, right? Well, we might draw from a couple other things that I referenced. But what I want you all to think about is the big data side of things. Ayo, was that you that brought that up? Because that was fucking good. And by the way you say it, you kind of make it sound like you're saying big data. And data is an art movement. And data is also about messing up context, doing things out of context. It's like very postmodern. And so
Yeah, I
I,
think he mentions it in the chapter, right?
oh,
Postman?
does he made the connection between data and data? Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a fun play on words, big data. You know what I mean? Because like we are the subjects of big data research, and you're right that we're always filling out surveys. Kadim, that's a great point. But I kind of wanted to just say, yeah, let's be thinking more on that. And then finally, there's a way that like because we listen to so many podcasts, every conversation we have with friends starts to sound like a podcast. There's a way that reality TV is now DIY. We're in a sort of sense doing it every time we make a story or a reel where we talk to the camera. Like that's kind of insane that we are all doing DIY reality TV because we all know reality TV is not real. The most important things about this current difficult time at Theory Underground, as I was streaming about a couple days ago, is that I kind of can't talk about the parts that are the most important to talk about because of all of the things that are involved. And also, it's almost like in a role that's almost blending pastor and professor. I'm also the keeper of a lot of people's secrets. People tell me things, and I'm not talking about their deep traumas. I'm not a therapist, and I try to do my best to not let people do that. But people will come and tell me shit that I'm not supposed to tell anyone else, and I hate it. And I've been complaining about it for the last 8 months because it gets worse and worse all the time. I'm constantly finding myself like I want to just turn on and just talk about what's going on, but I'm constantly finding myself having to like tread carefully because there's like this blender of different ingredients that is my brain, and one of the big ingredients to that recipe is people giving me shit I'm not supposed to tell other people, and I'm like, fuck, man, god damn it. And so it's really having me like constantly wonder about like this private public distinction, and maybe there's something messed up about me wanting to do everything as reality TV, so I am self-critical of that. Okay, but on that reality TV side, who, hands up, we just quick poll if you've seen Jerry Springer or Phil Donahue or shows like that from the 90s. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, and for those who have not, it's important that you think about it and that you actually take a couple looks at some videos, because when we're talking about the intensification of the TV medium into our pockets, and then the important inversion that we're now able to respond or react, we need to also think about how it's blending up the different modes. So like when you sit down for coffee with a friend, you're doing podcaster, yeah, but you're also doing newscaster. And now, and think about when a person says, okay, here's the tea. You're doing, like, what is that? It's actually like the people's column. It's like the celebrity gossip, except that you're doing it in your personal life, right? And this is not natural. That's not to say it's bad, but it's also just something that feels so normal that we should think about it a little bit more, maybe. Okay. So the last bit is to say that Jerry Springer and Phil Donahue and these kind of shows were huge sensational impact on culture in the 80s and 90s, and that it really peaked in the 90s. And then it continued on during the rise of the internet. But of course, it became more niche because only people who watch that kind of stuff saw it. Whereas before, it was a lot more like ubiquitous. And so if you're not familiar with that, it's an important cultural history lesson in where we were at right before the internet, right before the breaking point. But I want you to like start thinking about how Jerry Springer and Phil Donahue, and there's a lady who does a show just like that, and I'm forgetting her name, and I feel very bad about that. But they and say it in the comment section if you know who I'm talking about. this sort of style. Oprah's kind of like it, and Dr. Phil's kind of like it, but Jerry Springer is much, much, much more sensational. What I'm trying to say is like that was sort of Trojan horsed into American culture by people who are articulate and wear suits. And they did it in a sort of like, oh, you know, I care about showing people and also free speech and all this stuff. But that kind of drama reality content is also DIY now. And it is something that we are actively interpolated by and drawn into. And then we actually have to make choices about it. We're actually forced to make choices about it. It's not like you get to kind of just watch it or kind of avoid it. You're actively drawn into it in a sort of way that is new. And so I'm going to share in the comment section right here a link to a free audiobook. It's 5 hours long. I think you should listen to at least the first 5 minutes in preparation for next week. And of course, it'll probably be easy to listen to a lot more than 5 minutes, but no, not Sally, Jesse, Raphael, Ayo. But now I want to check that out too. Yeah. I'm going to create a public post on the Discord where I link what I just shared in the comment section. And then Ayo, if you would share that in response, like maybe a video of that, that'd be great. I'll probably share a couple examples of like Jerry Springer or Phil Donahue talking to some really crazy guests. We're talking like mother-daughter BDSM. We're talking about nudists in front of a live audience of people who are like all dressed up. We're talking about like Nation of Islam, black nationalists who say that we need to go to, like, there needs to be a race war. The white race needs to be abolished. Like literally, like we need race war now. We're talking about like signal boosting, the most sensational, wackadoodle off the wall kind of shit. And I want to think deeply about, and I'm not thinking deeply about it yet. I'm just saying I want to think deeply about how that kind of content had a certain kind of form between itself and the couch potato. And now that kind of content is microdosed and DIY'd in a new form of literally our lives. And so with that, I want to say thank you, everybody. And let's be thinking deeply about this. And if you're able to attend next week, I hope you'll be able to participate. But if you can't attend, but you share a voice message or something that you write as a reflection to this in that Discord, I'm going to try to summarize, if not read or play it next week. So it'll actually be a part. There'll be a little bit of continuity between this conversation and that one. All right. Thank you and take care, everybody. Have a good night.
Subscribers get access to all past courses at Theory Underground, from Chris Catrone to Michael Downs, as well as ongoing courses taught by David McKerracher, Benjamin Studebaker, and Nina Power. Subscribers also get access to monthly research seminars, and the higher tiers of involvement unlock discussions and one-on-one small group tutelage. A one-off course here or there is one thing, but Theory Underground is a school of thought, and it has research in motion. It is a process of development, generating the only, or at least some of the most revolutionary, transformative, or radical ideas coming out of the theory scene. If you are interested in the critique of the old and new left, but also a critique of postmodernism and metamodernism, and you want to go beyond all of that to something that is conserving and fighting in defense of the human, well, Theory Underground is where it's happening. Between authors like Marx, Heidegger, Levinas, as well as American authors like Postman and Illich and Lash, Barry, or underrated thinkers like Hannah Arendt, What we do is draw off of the history of philosophy, of political theory, of philosophy of nature, all the way up to the current contemporary debates or fundamental divisions within the theory scene between the Ljubljana School and the CCRU, Zizek and Land, and we say, no, we are here to stand up for the human, to defend meaning in the face of impossible odds. This is the anti-nihilist side of the theory scene. This is the pro-natalist side of the theory scene. This is the neither left nor right side of the theory scene. And it's all being organized by me, David McKerracher. I built this because there's nowhere else on the internet to get what I need, and there's other people who magically get something out of that as well, and they are making this possible right now by subscribing. So if you're like me and you're never a huge bookish kind of person, but somewhere along the way you got really into listening to educational materials, if you got really into listening to podcasts and then books at work, if you love going deep into ideas, but you're just not a traditional bookish kind of person, well, this is where the alliance between people like us and people who are more bookish and specialized are able to meet, to work through these things, and do so in defense of the human, in defense of our dignity, in defense of our common humanity and our intellectual integrity. This is not a place where we're going to kick you out because you're pro-life or pro-choice, or where you are an atheist or a agnostic or a Christian. But it is a place where you're expected to love one another regardless of such things, and to show up for people in your actual IRL real life communities regardless of such things. Not to become a little online hater who just uses theory to manipulate other people and confirm your biases. No, Theory Underground is something else. And if that is exciting for you, and if you're excited to learn about what this approach, this method, this school of thought has to offer, then I'm excited to meet you. Subscribe today. Thank you.